Hello everybody, welcome into my latest live video. It's the 4th of April, 2025. I'm CareyHolzman, and today we have a video review for you of the... Last week we did the Minisforum, it's kind of a high-end 12900. When I say kind of, it was high-end, like the best you could get 2 years ago. And now, since they have remaining inventory, it's a heck of a price. But some of you are saying, well, what about AMD? Well, this is the equivalent, a little bit better than what we did last Friday in an AMD version. It's a little bit more money, but it's a little better equipped. And we're going to take a look at it today. You'll see it's still shrink wrapped, and we'll do the live unboxing and plug it in and see what we've got. We did a lot of work to the studio this week, so I don't know if you're noticing any echo, but that's because a lot of things have been moved out of the studio. Not everything, there's still a lot of stuff to be done, but from your side of things, it probably looks very similar. Experimenting with a little bit with the lighting, and then once we get everything put where I want it, then we'll see if we still have an echo. But I am noticing it, I can hear it. I suppose the downside of having it so crowded with, you know, stuff everywhere was the sound absorption was fantastic. But if need be, we'll end up putting foam on the walls or something to take that up. But we still have Luke Greenia and Ben Laird. All join us and say hello from all over the world here as we are live, unscripted, and unrehearsed. Of course, our channel administrator, Mara, is there in the chat in blue. And a hello to Thomas Mac T, as well as Scott, Mark Baggett, Steve Zundert, and was it Stevie? Should get my glasses. Gary Bickle says hello. Doman 2000 and Phil Stodd say hello. Martin Postema joining us here in the chat, along with Kurt Schlegel and Jose Lopez. Welcome in, guys. Brad Revel says hello. Ron Barnish joining us. Welcome in, Ron. Rick Lakes says hello. Thomas Backenstow says hello. Welcome into Thomas. He says there's no echo on his end. Okay, well, good. I mean, if the microphone processing does the job, it should remove it, but I'll have to play it back later and hear it for myself. I didn't configure the microphone to filter out the echo, but it may have been just by luck. It's already set up to do that. But thank you for the feedback. Robert Kachina joins us, along with Bull Terrier Mac, Chris Dunn saying hello. There's our friend Mark Leibowitz, who runs a computer repair shop out in the Chicago area, joining us here in the chat. And yeah, mini PCs. I'll tell you what, one of the things I've learned is that whatever it is you're doing for a living, you're probably not going to be doing it for more than 30 years. And it's not because you don't want to, it's because very few jobs, at least in you know, looking around at people I know in my own life included, aren't doing the same thing they were doing 30 years ago. And if you can, you know, if you can have that job that lasts you 50 years, all the power to you. But the industry's constantly changing. So all those nutcases who opened up VCR repair shops in the 1970s, and people said, "What are you doing, man?" Then started offering also DVD repair, and then eventually, within about 20 years, all those shops are pretty much gone. That's just the way of things, and you got to find something else to do for a living. So when I look back at where I started and where I'm at today, the mini PCs are the latest change in the industry. It's not a change I make. It's a change I either have to roll with or be left behind. So much the same of any other change in the past. Initially, you know, back in the 1990s, I was installing multimedia kits for people who had computers and wanted to add a sound card and a CD drive. They were usually sold together. It was about $300 just for the multimedia kit, then whatever labor it was to install it. And back before that, I was building 486 33s, you know, 4625. Those were the first computers I was building professionally. And prior to that, it was Apple Plus, or Apple II rather, Commodore VIC-20, Commodore 64, the Commodore PET before that, the PET. Then, of course, I was into Atari 400, 800 for a long time, but that was all just fun and play. Once it became work, then it was the Windows, or what we call IBM compatible computers. And those were changing rapidly from 286 to 386. Again, it was still, at that point, it was still a hobby for me. At the 486 point, that's when I got my first job professionally building and repairing computers. That led to me writing a book, which contributing to one book, writing another book, which led to me exposing the leaking capacitor plague, which led to me, well, I guess the leaking capacitor plague was first, then the book, then the radio show. I did the radio show from about 2005 until about 2011, I want to say. And during that time, I was also teaching at the college, and I was also doing live presentations at computer clubs that were starting to dwindle away. Computer clubs were very big in the 90s, and their memberships were just dwindling and dwindling. And the pandemic finally killed that off. And YouTube killed off radio as far as my career is concerned. So the radio got left behind, and YouTube was started, well, for me, 2008 when we created the channel. So that left the radio behind me as I marched forward, and this new platform, which is worldwide without all the commercial breaks and much better audio quality than what you can get on radio, as more and more people abandon radio. And then, of course, with the advent of the electric vehicle, you can't put an AM radio in an electric vehicle, at least not in a fully electric vehicle, because it's on the same frequency as AM radio. The motors won't allow for the AM signal to come through. So then you'd have to spend a lot of money to basically build a lead box to put the radio in. It would add quite a bit of money to the price of the car. And, you know, kids today, as the old people like to say, they don't really listen to radio. I mean, the concept of listening to somebody else's playlist with commercials that you can't skip or fast forward, intolerable. So we're seeing that start to fade away as well. And after, what's it been, 90? So let's say I started building computers in 91, then 2001 would be 10 years. 2011 would be 20 years. 2021 would be 30 years. So we're at about the 34-year mark. And while PC building is still happening, it is not the craze it once was. It is fading, and fading hard. There's no sort of switch that occurs. It's not like one day you wake up and nobody's doing it. It's just the phone stops ringing as often. And you never know that it's coming or when it's coming. And every time the phone doesn't ring for a day, you wonder, at least I do, is it going to ring tomorrow? And after a period of time, you know, you figure out if you're just on a little dip and it comes back, or it just never comes back. And what I've learned is oftentimes when you get those dips, very rarely, you know, if the dip lasts 2 weeks, it's probably not coming back, or at least a month. You better start getting ready, because the culture's changed, they're shifting. So what are the culture shifting to? Where are they going? Well, a lot of home users are shifting to their smartphone and their tablet. Mostly the smartphone is all they need now. The computer itself, it's making less and less sense to have a big, spacious computer tower when now you can get something that's nearly half the price, and in many cases more powerful for the same amount of money, in a much smaller, quieter package. And the idea about upgrading and all these other concerns that the old timers have doesn't need to be done anymore. Like, basically, they've advanced so far that the way that these machines are coming equipped should last the lifetime of the machine. By the time you don't have enough storage or you don't have enough RAM, you should long ago have replaced the machine. Essentially, there are always going to be those users who need to have a custom-built computer, who can afford it, and they know what they're buying. Most consumers don't know what they're buying. They want the cheapest thing that'll do what they need it to do. That's it. They don't want to upgrade it. They won't even open it and dust it. Ask me how I know. So I'm not here to tell you what you need. I'm just here to tell you that the business model side of things is that more and more customers want to spend less, and this is the ideal solution, and it's what is, at least on the consumer side and even on small business side, replacing the desktop. It's already been happening. And again, while the desktops are still being made, it's not like an on-off switch. It's just slowly fading out. And what's not helping is in the gamer and enthusiast community, where the graphics cards are very expensive and hard to get. That's almost like the nail in the coffin at this point. So we'll see where it goes from here, but some people will say, well, Carey sure is doing a lot of mini PCs lately. Yes, because that's where the market is moving. Now, well, I could independently continue to build computers. People aren't buying them, and they're stacking up here, and it's making a space issue for me, and it's a lot of money. You know, if you've got 20, 30 computers worth $1,000 a piece, and you'll be lucky to sell them, you know, for 20 to 40% off what it cost you to make them, that's a quick way to go out of business. So there's really no incentive for me to continue that unless a customer orders something and they'd like me to build it on camera. However, the cost of shipping has gone up, the likelihood of damage has gone up, and the length of time it takes to get something shipped has gone up. So it's expensive and slow and likely to break, and it's already fading out anyway. So my advice for people who still want the old-fashioned desktop tower is build it yourself, and you can have all the upgrades you want. And if you build it, you're probably going to want to upgrade it. If you get a little machine like this and it's really well equipped, then you can add whatever you want through USB indefinitely. You can add as much storage as you want through USB. You can add a better audio DAC through USB. You can add a DVD or a Blu-ray drive through USB. This whole idea of taking something apart and having to upgrade it is very old-fashioned now. And the kids today, we keep using that phrase, will just shake their head and look at you like, what are you doing? Well, why are you working that hard? You don't need to do that. But with few exceptions, there obviously are kids today that enjoy the hobby of building computers, and they enjoy the control of picking their parts. But most of the kids that enjoy that can't afford it. So you kind of run back and forth on that. So yeah, we're going to see a trend of more network attached storage type devices as more and more on the business side, servers are being replaced with network attached storage. When it comes to my managed service, the managed services that I offer to my clients, I have been for years shutting down and retiring their servers and replacing them with network attached storage. I started doing that, gosh, probably around 2012, 2014, maybe 2015 at the latest. And just now it's starting to come out that, hey, these little NAS boxes, they run apps a lot, very similar to a server. They can provide you Kubernetes, and they can provide you VMs, and they can provide all these services that people have traditionally had $5,000 plus servers for, that eat up a lot of power, generate a lot of heat, make a lot of noise. And now you can just put a little NAS in there with so much more storage, runs quietly, uses less power. And if you're a company with under, say, 40 or 50 employees, it may be all you need. Now, once you get to a certain size company, you still have to have a server. And again, you'd probably still be getting tower computers or the small form factor computers from Dell, HP, Lenovo, etc. Because you're buying them at scale. You're buying them, you know, a couple thousand at a time, or you're leasing them a couple thousand at a time. And then, of course, you have a full-time, a dedicated IT staff to maintain the network, the PCs, the servers, the phone system, all of it falls under a whole department. That's all they do. And well, when I did that kind of work in corporate America, that kind of work still remains today. That hasn't changed very much, except cybersecurity has increased and has become more than just a one-person job for big companies because of how complex cybersecurity has gotten. So things like things that we've been talking about, like making backups and things like that, we've been telling people that for decades, and it's never been more relevant and more likely that you're going to need one because of the bad guys and the hacking. It's never been more important today than it's ever been in the past, and it was important in the past. But people are like, oh, it never happened. Yeah, it's gonna. It's getting so. It's pretty bad out there right now. So if you don't protect your data, well, that's on you when you lose it, but that's become even more important. And so as the whole economy, or not so much the economy, but the way people use computers and how long these computers are lasting now. It's not like, oh, we had a 286 last year and now there's a 386 this year and a 486 next year and then the Pentium. That was a rapid evolution. Well, we're still evolving very quickly. We're not evolving to the point where it's making much difference for most home users to go from one generation of chip to the next. It's maybe at most a 10% performance increase. Now, for some people that are really into it, they want that 10%. But for most of us, until you're about 4 generations behind, you won't notice any difference between 1 or 2 or 3 generations. It's so minor that for the amount of money you're spending to do that, what you're getting in return is just a teeny tiny bit. But those people who care the most about getting that little tiny bit, regardless of how much it costs, generally speaking, they're the ones making the videos. They're the enthusiasts. So if you're a home user and you're watching most of these YouTube videos coming from enthusiasts, you see a lot of very impractical advice where somebody's just throwing money at something to get a little tiny bit in return. And I'm here to ground you. I'm here to keep it practical and to give you the sound advice I give my business clients, which is you got to consider what your return on your investment is. Now, if you've got the money to burn, all the power to you. I'm not saying not to do it. But the customers that I talk to, whether they're home users or business clients, they all have a strict budget. And I want to make sure that my client gets something that's going to last many years reliably, that's going to run to exceed what they need it to do, and isn't going to harm my reputation that if I sell them something that keeps failing or is too slow, that they take their business away to somebody else. And then how do I run a business? So I'm always trying to find that perfect middle ground. And that's what leads us to today's video. Because last Friday, we looked at Minisforum's 12900 HK mini PC, and that was the best you could buy 2 years ago. Didn't get any better than that. It was about $1,000. Today, for under $500, you get that machine pretty well equipped because it's 2 years old. That means you have 2 years of updates. So Windows 11 22H2 will probably be installed, and you have to upgrade it to Windows 24H2 if you want to keep it secure online with all the added bells, whistles, and features that have been added to Windows 11. That could take a while. It could take a couple hours to do that, as you guys well know that watch this channel. In exchange for that, you're getting the machine for nearly half price. It's still got the same amount of life in it it had. It's not like it's not like a used car. It's brand new. It's never been used. It's just been sitting on a shelf. Well, in much the same way, because of the trend and the economics and everything, we are starting to see yesterday's high-end flagship computers, whether from Intel or AMD, sold at about half the price they were. And if anything, they're equipped better. They've got more RAM. They used to give you 16 gigs of RAM and 512 of storage. Now they're throwing in 32 gigs of RAM and a terabyte of storage. And that makes more sense on a higher end chip. I see people, they've got these, really cheap mini PCs. They're like $200, and they want to put 32 gigs of RAM and a 4 terabyte drive, which they could buy 4 mini PCs with for what they paid for. It doesn't make any sense. It's like putting hubcaps on a lawnmower. You can, no one's going to stop you, but that's just, to me, a complete waste of money. So today, we're looking at the AMD side of things that Minisforum offers, called the UM880. Now this one is slightly higher performance, equipped slightly better than the Intel 12900 we looked at last week, at about $50 more. So it's not that they're giving anything away, but which one's a better value to you depends on how you see the value and whether or not you're loyal to one brand or the other. Most of us, at least in my world, we're loyal to what we can afford. So, all right, taking a look at today's machine, we have, I'm going to take you over to Minisforum's site, and we'll see the way Minisforum is promoting this, because again, I've got no rehearsal. Everything is done live and unscripted here. So I'm not even sure how this is equipped. I did look at the specs, but I forgot. So let's take a look together. Here we go. So the UM880 Plus. So there was always a UM880. Today it's being sold as the Plus. Same with last week when we talked about the Minisforum, the NAB 9 Plus. It was a little different than the NAB 9 and how it's equipped. So what you see here is you're getting 32 gigs of RAM and 1 terabyte right out of the box. They've got different power adapters depending on what country you're in. And as we scroll down to see how it's equipped, these pictures here show the ports on the back. So we've got a dynamic microphone, the power button, 2 USB 3.2 Type A ports, audio jack, which is for your headphones, microphone, or headset, and then a clear BIOS button, which I don't know why you would need that, but there you go. On the back side, you've got 2 more USB 2.0 ports, a display port, a USB 4 that does DisplayPort out, and power delivery. You've got an HDMI and an OCuLink if you want to put a graphics card on the externally. And then you've got 2.5 gig LAN. So the NAB 9 had 2.5 gig LAN ports. Those were Intel based. I'm kind of curious by comparison if this is Realtek or Intel. We're going to find that out. Let me go back to, let's see. Not going to let me. There it goes. Let's go down here to the specifications just to see how they're promoting it. This is a Ryzen 7 8845 with the Radeon 780M built-in graphics. This is an 8-core, 16-thread processor that'll boost to 5.1 gigahertz. Again, with the OCuLink support and the 40 gig per second USB 4 port that supports 65 to 100 watts power delivery and DisplayPort out. It's got Generation 4 SSD. Now this unit has 2 M.2s, whereas last week's unit only had 1. But this one has 1 Ethernet port, where last week's had 2. That's why I'm saying there's different value depending on what's important to you. This also has DDR5, where last week, looking at the Intel 12900, was DDR4. You know, whether or not that makes a difference depends on how you use it. It's a 65 watt TDP on the CPU. And as we scroll down, that's the inside. You can see there's 2 PCIe M.2 slots here, NVMe slots. Gen 4, both of them are Gen 4. And your standard dual socket SODIMM DDR5 RAM, which this says has 5600 speed. Those are going to be 2 16s. It says it'll take a max of 96, but they do have, Crucial, I think, came out with 64 gigs apiece, so you can actually bring that up to 128 gigs. Again, it doesn't really make sense why you would, but it's not a limitation of the motherboard, it's a limitation of the RAM. Just like here it says max 4 terabytes on the storage, there's no such thing as a maximum. If you wanted to put 8 terabytes in there and spend $800, you know, you could totally do that. A little bit about the OCuLink port and the graphics dock that would be required. And this graphics dock also requires yet another power supply. It's an ugly cabling mess and it's very expensive, and it will not run to, the graphics card will not run to its greatest possible performance because the OCuLink port will bottleneck it. But it's much, much better than the built-in graphics. I think if you just want to add a graphics card, you should protect it. And in my opinion, if you want a gaming PC, build a gaming PC. This is not what this is built for. They do have some mini PCs that are built with mobile graphics chips, the same as gaming laptops. I would not do this. This is so unsafe, in my opinion, to put your multi-$1,000 graphics card just out in the open where anybody could get their fingers on it, especially if you have pets or small kids. And you're barely seeing the amount of cables, right? Because you're going to need a power cable, you need the OCuLink cable, you need your video cables. It's a big spidery mess. I'm not a fan of that, but it's your money. You can hook up to 3 monitors at the same time using 1 monitor plugged into HDMI, 1 into DisplayPort, and 1 into the USB 4 port using an adapter. All 3 of them will support 4K at 60 Hertz with the HDMI going to, at least on 1 monitor, 8K at 60 Hertz. I don't know what you do with 8K yet, but it's coming, I guess. A little bit about the USB 4 port on there, a little bit about the wireless connection, which they say is Wi-Fi 6E, and Bluetooth 5.3, which sounds exactly the same as what we had on the NAB 9 Plus. Again, there's a picture of the ports. A little bit about the cooling system. Minisforum does use liquid metal on their coolers. It must be applied by machine in order to get an airtight, perfect fusion between the bottom of the heatsink and the top of the CPU. And no human being can do that better. What ends up happening if you take that apart is you will always make it worse. There is nothing you can do to apply the liquid metal unless you have the proper machinery that does that. If you take theirs off and apply your own, yours will oxidize within a year, and your heat and temps and longevity will be severely restricted. And if you don't believe me, just try it. It's unwise. So taking a look at what's in the box, they say we get the mini PC, the power adapter, of course the power cable, a VESA mount, an HDMI cable, an instruction manual. That's all becoming pretty standard these days. And they're showing it using for live streaming, meetings, online education, in a school, or for school, outside of the school, in an office, or even gaming. So because there's so many types of games, when I refer to gaming, I'm referring to high-end AAA title, expensive games that are, brand new, that just came out, that require intense GPU usage. But lots of older games run fine, retro games, esports games typically run fine. And even some AAA titles will run fine as long as you turn down the resolution and some of the settings. But again, it's up to the gamer to decide how finicky they want to be, and that's often decided by how much money they want to spend. I understand there's Minisforum sells a lot of these machines what we call bare bones. So bare bones means you're not going to get an operating system or RAM or storage. They take the price is cheaper, but the machine, the way they ship it to you, will not work until you put your own RAM and storage in there, and then you have to provide your own operating system. But you can save some money on the machine, but I guarantee you're going to spend more for the amount of RAM. Like if you were to buy your own 32 gigs of RAM and your own 1 terabyte storage, and then add it to the cost of this mini PC, it'll cost you more than, obviously, Minisforum is buying storage and RAM at high volume bulk pricing. So, unless you're lucky and catch something on sale, it's highly unlikely you're going to make yourself a better deal. But if you said, well, that RAM's not fast enough or that PCIe is not big enough, you got to keep in mind there's no fan in here, and you're just trapping more heat by making it go faster, consuming more power, and spending more money. And if you want to do that, be my guest. But you're not making it better. In one way, you're enhancing it, and in another way, you're degrading it. So if you can get it right from the factory, just as they spec it out, and make any upgrades external, so make use the USB ports for more storage, and those USB 4 ports run just as fast as internal PCIe Gen 3 NVMe's would anyway, without trapping the heat inside, and should something happen to the computer, you simply unplug that drive and go plug it into any other computer. So that minimizes just the anxiety and frustration of having to fix a computer that's down, whether it's a virus or ransomware or some component failure or power outage. Having that ability is in your benefit to put that external, the storage on externally. There's almost no downside to that, other than, I suppose, the one cable it requires and the unit itself taking up a little bit of desk space. But this is how the market is changing. The days of people putting multiple drives in a computer, the downside of that is you're slowing the computer down. Somebody's saying, I got all these old hard drives, I hate for them to go to waste. So what they do is they slow their computer down by adding all these drives inside the computer, because now the computer has to wait on those drives. Even if you're not using them, if they're powered up and connected, it's always pulling those drives, and your system performance will start to degrade. Your heat goes up and your power consumption goes up. It's sort of like you get a really nice fuel efficient car and you have all these extra bags of cement, and you're like, I'm just going to put these in the trunk, and the whole car sits down like this. All your performance goes away. Your gas mileage is severely hindered. And it doesn't take long for whatever you put in the trunk to be worth less than what it's costing you in the wear and tear on the tires, the wear and tear on the engine, your loss of performance, and your enjoyment of the new car. But you can do that if you want to. Strongly advise you to think this through. We used to do things that way because we had to. Hard drives were so expensive and they were so small that we'd often run out of space. Today, it's just not the situation for most users. And for anybody who's that level of enthusiast that wants to continue doing it, I'm not telling you not to. I'm just saying you're part of a dying breed that's all going away, and for good logical reasonings. Newer drives are much larger capacity. They're cheaper than ever. They're still slow by comparison to a solid state drive. They still use a lot of power compared to a solid state drive, but you can get a lot more capacity. You can get 24 terabyte drives. I mean, how many of those do you need? And what are you doing with your computer that would require? It just sounds like there's some very niche need case for that. Doesn't represent the average owner. So I'm here to talk to the every person and to let everybody know what to expect out of a machine that's very high end for the money, that will likely meet the needs of more than 90% of viewers. And for that 10% that's the enthusiast, you guys will only be happy if you do things yourself. So let's just get that out of the way. There won't be any mini PC that satisfies some people. And that's okay. You know, that's your right. But as long as the marketplace is showing a demand for this, I got to go where the market goes if I want to stay in business. So this is where it's been going for a while. We started seeing our first mini PC was that Intel NUC i3. That machine still works today, by the way. That's 12 years ago. We don't use it anymore because it's too slow. But absolutely, there's nothing wrong with it. And I wasn't quite sure, you know, how are these things going to last? How reliable are they? What's going to be an issue here? Power supply, CPU fan, RAM, nothing. All the original parts it was built with are in it today. Nothing's ever been changed. So that gave me confidence to say, okay, I can start recommending these for my customers, at least the Intel NUCs. And just about the time I was doing that, Intel sold off their NUC division. They licensed it out to ASUS. And then Intel sold off their solid state drive division to SK Hynix. So it's been interesting to see, you know, the amount of time it takes me to evaluate something, which is usually no less than a year in most cases, before I offer it to a customer, only to find out that company doesn't do that anymore. Now, if a company doesn't do it anymore because people aren't buying them, for whatever reason, maybe they're too expensive, or they got sold to another company or bought out by another company, that doesn't really change a lot for me as far as if I know I can trust the Intel NUC line, it doesn't matter if ASUS is making them as long as they're licensed. On the other hand, when it's a brand new manufacturer, which at one point this company called Minisforum reached out to me, I'd never heard of them. And at that time, I said, well, let's see how they compare. I was blown away by just how much more value you got, because Intel was adding quite a bit of profit on their models. That Minisforum was a lot better value. So then I thought, well, maybe they're not made as well. Well, no, if anything, they're made the same, if not better. And on top of that, well, all the Intel NUCs were basically looking alike, and Intel started making them like mini ITX machines. They were getting, you know, this big. That's not a NUC to me. That's a mini ITX build. In the meantime, Minisforum was coming out with all these innovative designs nobody else had. And I quickly became a fan of Minisforum, and that's why it's not that I'm only a fan of Minisforum. There are lots of other great square boxes made by other great manufacturers, but if you want something other than a square box, Minisforum has the most variety. And today it's a square box, but I just want you to know, if it's not your cup of tea, they have so many different designs and so many different form factors. I think they're worth checking out, and they're a great value, and we've been using them long enough to know they're very reliable. So with that, let me jump back over to the chat room here real quick. Mortant says hello. Mecha Cameron joining us. Bill Stodd says hello. There's David Herzog joining us, and Chris Garrett. Dazzle555 says hello. Al J is joining us. Alvin Shaver says hello. Welcome in, guys. Mark Leibowitz said, this is a damn nice mini PC looking at the specs. He said his client today is going with a Minisforum UM880 Slim, which is pretty much the same mini PC without the OCuLink. That OCuLink port seems to add about 50 bucks. Yeah, I haven't compared this to the UM870 Slim because I'm not sure which processor it has. But the $50 difference between this and the NAB 9, remember the NAB 9 has the two 2.5 gig LAN ports and one internal M.2. This has two internal M.2s along with DDR5 and a slightly higher end processor which has a better GPU for gaming, built-in integrated GPU compared to the Intel. So if you're not gaming on it, whether or not you're willing to pay more to get that second M.2 Gen 4 or that DDR5, that's where some of your $50 price point comes in. I believe that's a reasonable explanation, if I had to guess. Bajan Guy says hello. And let's see, miss anybody? I hope I got everybody. Welcome in. It's good to see everybody joining us. I hope you're having a great Friday. This coming Tuesday will be the second Tuesday of the month. That means there'll be some more Windows updates released. A lot of people talking about anything negative they can find about Windows. Nobody has anything positive to say. There's a new feature rolling out, and this is going to be primarily beneficial to IT departments, called the man, I've already forgotten what it's called. It's in the preview build, and it's called, hold on, let me search for it. Quick Machine Recovery Tool, QMR, right? So the Quick Machine Recovery Tool is something long overdue, in my opinion, from Microsoft. If you remember, there were a lot of businesses down after the CrowdStrike bad update where computers were stuck in a boot loop where they get a blue screen restart, get a blue screen restart. Some of the computers, like when you're in an airport and it's showing you all your flights, some of those computers are put away where they're very rarely ever touched and they're not easy to get to. And it required a hands-on approach to bypass this blue screen. It wasn't, Windows 11 was not self-healing it. So with this new feature, which hopefully they'll roll out, probably I'm guessing in the fall with 25H2, the ability for the machine to auto-heal itself, should that ever happen again, and you know it will reduce the amount of cost and lost business from businesses. And again, where we see a lot of negativity in any sort of Windows 11 news, very few people focus on the positive side. And I would say, if you could find 2 bad things to say about Windows 11, I can find 10 good things to counter you with. For every 2 bad things, there's 10 good things. And so for some people, especially on the internet, they don't want to hear about the good things. They're not interested. They focus on the bad things. And then within about 3 months, they've forgotten all about them and moved on to whatever bad things they're talking about today. And it's a cycle that just spins around and around and around. And I'm not going to do anything to change that, but I want my audience to be aware of seeing that pattern and to decide if you want to fall into being reactive like that. You're just being, in my opinion, manipulated and scared to generate clicks. If that's a form of entertainment for you, don't let me stop you. But if it's a source of stress or frustration, my best advice is get out of Windows and move into iOS, move into the Mac world, or move into Linux. Stop. I mean, if you really despise Windows, just please, for everybody's sake, stop using it. It's very frustrating to me to listen to somebody voluntarily use something and then claim they have to. No, you don't. You absolutely don't have to. You may choose at any time. It's your choice. And if you feel like you don't have a choice, well, if what you're talking about is work, then your opinion doesn't matter, right? If I'm getting paid to do a job, I'm doing the job the way the employer's telling me to do it. It doesn't matter what I want. If you're doing something for fun and you're not getting fun out of it, change it. So this is a very easy solution. Some people complaining about Windows sign-in. This is all a big nothing burger. even if Windows did require a sign-in, how is that different from Google on your Android phone? How is that different from any Apple operating system, from their phones to their... They all require you to sign in. The only one who doesn't on that scale is Microsoft, and then of course Linux. So Microsoft's one of the last holdouts. Just to remind you, as people start screaming about nothing, even if they were right, there's still the point that have you used an Android phone? Have you used an Apple product? They all require sign-ins in order for the products to work. So I think we should praise Microsoft for still enabling it, even if we have to go do this workaround. It's really no big deal. It really isn't. When they take it away entirely, like Google has and Apple has, well, then it's just less reason to stay with Windows now. If they start all becoming kind of the same, yeah, maybe that'd be a good reason to, to see less benefit for having one over the other and make it easier to make that decision to switch to something else. Anyway, I think it's time to unbox this bad boy. All right, so again, everything's live, unscripted. Did I get a brick in here? Is this thing going to be damaged or not working? Manufacturing's pretty much all automated today. So those days of rolling the dice and hoping you got something that was, complete and not missing any parts, almost never happens. The days of getting a product that simply won't turn on, doesn't work, almost never happens anymore. The days of somebody building it incorrectly because they're having a bad day, they weren't paying attention, they weren't feeling good, gone. It's all done by machines. Machines do it always the same. They never need a break. They never have an attitude. The worst thing that we've seen happen is someone feeds the parts into the machine backwards. And again, pretty rare occurrence when it happens. And it's been a long time since I've seen any news about that. But that's the human side. Once we take the humans out of it, the process becomes extraordinarily efficient, precisely the same every time. And they can run those factories 24/7. They don't have to go on 8-hour shifts. There's no child labor or anything like that. So you end up getting a much better value over a much better product as far as how well it's built. They're all built exactly the same. All right, let's start this process here. I like to shoot these videos live so I can show you the entire unboxing experience. Should you decide to buy one of these, you should see exactly what I'm seeing. If you don't, got to raise some questions. Why is yours different? What I will do later with these often is I'll edit them down to just a quick unboxing, just so people who want to know what's in the box. A lot of times when we dig into things like the device manager or Crystal Disk Mark, it goes right over most people's heads. And then that adds time to the video, and they're less likely that they're going to watch that video. So you've got that viewer too that's just like, give it to me in plain English, right? Let me see it. Just give me the basics. Don't get all nerdy on me. So I will take a lot of the nerdiness out later, but just for people to be aware that these are all originally filmed live, unscripted, unrehearsed in one take. Those are for the people that watch the edited down version later. Okay, there's the box sleeve. We're in an orange box that's got a serial number on it, and that's about its only identification outside of the sleeve. Andy Kane joins us and says hello. There's Essential Working Too Hard joining us in the chat. And Mustang Mike says hello. All right, so as soon as we take the lid off here, we've got our standard, I forget what they call this little pamphlet. I'm probably gonna have to put my glasses on to see that. It's usually like warranty information. And then you've got this other little pamphlet here. It's all written in different languages because they sell these in various countries, and they just put one packaging for everybody. Cuts down on the cost. That's a little added protection, so it ensures that the machine arrives to you unscathed and undamaged. Right here on top, we've got our mini PC. They'll have some kind of plastic wrapping around them. and it's silver in color. I'll bring this up to the camera. We'll look at these ports together. All right, so we've got our two USB 3.0 Type A's, our power button, audio jack right up there for headphones, microphone, etc. Nothing here. Those are just air vents. It looks like to get to the bottom, we're going to have to take these rubber feet off. We've got a warning sticker right there. Oh, it looks like there may be some antennas attached to the bottom, so you be careful when you remove that, you don't tear the antennas off. On the back, big old heat sink that keeps your CPU cool. You're going to feel hot air come out of there when this is on. That's what it's supposed to do. That's our 2.5 gig LAN, our HDMI port. Now, the OCuLink port is covered, and my guess is that's what the second M.2 is for. You can either, again, I got to look in the box, but I think that there's an adapter you plug into the M.2. That's your OCuLink port, or you can not hook up the OCuLink port and use the other M.2 as a secondary NVMe drive. But let me verify that as we continue with the unboxing. Just making a guess at this point. There's our USB 4 Type-C. That's a 40 gig per second full-speed USB 4 port. That's our display port. And two USB 2s. This is where you should be plugging your keyboard and your mouse in. And then we have a standard barrel-style power connector right there. So overall, pretty straightforward. Nothing surprising or unexpected there. Getting back over to the box, we've got a piece of foam in here, and then there's a box here with a little cutout, just like that. Pull that box out. This has been throwing me because it's not really a box. It's in the shape of a box. You see, this piece was sitting down, and this was covering it up. This really threw me the first time I saw that, because I'm like, how does this go back in? I know I took it out. Let's see what we've got in here. Power brick. I like that we have a separate, this is a cloverleaf or Mickey Mouse style power plug that a lot of laptops use. So you've got your power adapter that goes in, or your power plug rather, that goes into the adapter, and then the adapter goes into the mini PC. I like this design because if it was just a wall wart, it takes up a lot of space to plug directly into a surge protector, and then you can't plug in things around it, and you're limited by the length of one cable. By adding the second cable, that gives me far longer cable reach and frees up the space on my surge protector, since that's an ordinary plug, so it can share nicely with its neighbors. The adapter, let me get my glasses and I'll tell you. Better get my good magnifying glasses for this one. This is 19 volts, 6.32 amps, 120 watts. So this little guy is 120 watts. That's pretty impressive for as small as that is. This is an HDMI cable. A couple of extra rubber feet, since the rubber feet require removal to get the bottom off of it. Sometimes they don't stick back on correctly, or they might tear, especially as they age. So I would put these away. You get two extras, and after that, well, you're on your own. Then we've got the VESA bracket. This is for mounting back onto the rear of the computer. And then you can mount the computer behind your monitor or under a desk, on the side of the desk, wherever you want to. I've never used one of these, but inside there's screws and the adapter itself. Now, if you want to mount this behind your monitor, good luck reaching for the USB and to plug anything in. But, you know, some people don't do that. Some people never use it. So once you get everything plugged in and working, it's just hidden behind the monitor, and you get nice clean cable management and a nice clean desk. This little guy right here is what I thought we might be getting. This is probably the M.2 to OCuLink. Yep, that's exactly what it is. So this, I'll bring this up to the camera to show you what this looks like. This is what the second M.2 port is being used for. Now, because the OCuLink in the Minisforum NAB9 Plus is, you can't disable it. There is no second M.2 port. So this model, the UM880 Plus, gives you the option of using the second M.2 slot. That's OCuLink on one side, and M.2 on the other side. So you get your main NVMe storage, and then you have secondary NVMe storage, or you use the secondary NVMe storage by plugging this in, and then it'll poke out through this hole right here, and you'll remove that dust cover, and now you've got OCuLink. So you don't have to use this if you're not going to use OCuLink, but it comes included in the purchase price. So it's nice to have options. We'll put everything else back in the box right now and set that aside. And let's fire this bad boy up for the first time and see what version of Windows we've got on here and who makes the network card. And I imagine our Gen 4 NVMe is probably a Kingston that runs 4,800 to 5,000 megabytes per second. When you go to the high-end Gen 4 NVMe drives that can run 7,300 megabytes per second, you're also adding a lot more heat. Again, without a fan on this side, there's nothing to cool that heat. It's just passive airflow. If you're somebody that really wants a high-performance machine, they do make more expensive mini PCs that are a little more desktop-like. But for most people, you'll never see a difference between 4,700 megabytes per second and 12,000 megabytes per second. The faster you go, the more minimal the return is noticeable by a human being. So your Windows startup time doesn't change, your app load times don't change. You're not going to type any faster, you're not going to read any faster, and the programs may load by milliseconds difference. With some exceptions, but that's the general rule. I wouldn't be too obsessed with the numbers, because the higher the number, the more the cost. But you reach a point of diminishing returns where you're just chasing benchmarks at that point. So I'm totally fine with the way this is spec'd out of the box. I personally would not use the secondary M.2. I would not use that for another storage because, again, we're trapping more heat. I would rather go external. I would get an NVMe drive, put it into an NVMe enclosure that's USB 4, like the Zyke drive or the Arico drive, and you're going to move the data at 3,300, 3,400 megabytes per second externally. That's so much better, and get the heat out of the inside of the box. So for me personally, that's what I would do. I don't have any use for OCuLink as of today, so I would just leave it just the way they built it from the factory. I would not be opening this up. But that's me, and that's how I would set it up for most clients. And then, of course, if things change, I always have the option. It's just nice knowing I've got the option. All right, we'll plug that in. We got a keyboard and a mouse here we'll plug in, and then I'll grab my HDMI cable. Turn the keyboard and mouse on. We're not plugging it into the internet at this time. On our first Windows boot, we want to be able to create that local user account. We don't want updates going in yet. We want to make sure that the machine works as it should. Then we can go and put updates in. But if we have a problem right out of the gate where the machine's not firing up or working properly, the first thing you need to do, unplug any printers, flash drives, network, anything you don't need to start the computer. So rather than unplugging what you don't need, what if you just never plugged it in to begin with until you verified the darn thing works? So we go through that setup process, the out-of-box experience, and assuming, as usual, everything works like it should, then we start adding one thing at a time. We'll add the network cable, download the updates. Once all the updates are done, then we can add the flash drive to bring over, install any programs or data. We can install our printer. We can set up our email, one thing at a time, and always reboot between things so that if the reboot fails for any reason, you know the last thing you did that caused that. If you do a bunch of things before you reboot, I don't want to be you in the diagnostic. I feel bad for you because that's bad decision making. If you think you're saving time by avoiding the reboot, you might be if it works out. On the other hand, the diagnostic will take 100 times longer, and no exaggeration, to figure out what of the things you did. Got to remember what I changed before I rebooted, and then to undo them one by one until you figure it out. It is, for me, a nightmare. So to avoid that nightmare, slow and steady wins the race. Okay, just overall. Let's power this on, and let's jump over to camera 2, and we'll get our first boot. This is live. Everything's been unpackaged, unboxed, live on camera. So any anxiety about getting a bad unit or what's going to happen, I'm so confident in manufacturing today and the processes, I have no concern about it. Furthermore, returns on Amazon are very easy. They have 30-day free returns. So worst case scenario is I'm slightly inconvenienced that I have to return it. And that very rarely happens, maybe once every 2 years. And I've got to tell you, I order a lot of machines. You got to consider the scale. The odds of you getting a bad one, pretty extreme. You go buy a lottery ticket if it happens. But if you order it from Amazon, Amazon's got your back there. Nothing to worry about. You got 30 days free returns at Amazon. Now, the system's very quiet. I don't really hear anything coming from it. We're doing our first power on right now. And I'm just very curious what version of Windows they've given us. So to find that out, we go through our out-of-box experience, and everything looks like it should. English, United States, yes. United States. Secondary, keyboard method, US. Secondary keyboard, skip. I'm going to say I don't have internet. See the option, I don't have internet right there? I'm going to click on that and tell it twice. Agree to the license agreement, and it's going to let me create that local account. So we'll put in user as the username, nothing for the password. And then we'll go through the privacy settings here. I like to leave location settings on so my date and time always stay up to date. Everything else I personally prefer to turn off. But an end user can change the way I've set it for them. It's no big deal. It's just in the settings section. It's all reversible and customizable to the individual needs or desires of the user themselves. So we just wait a minute while this finishes setting up Windows 11, and then we can get into the specs and see who makes that network card and Wi-Fi, both wired and wireless, as well as what version of Windows, as I mentioned. We're probably going to also want to update the AMD Adrenalin software, and that's true on any AMD machine. And we'll just wait a minute while that runs. And come over here for a second while I'm off camera. Turn my ceiling fan on for some reason. Doesn't want to work today. Okay, well, maybe I didn't forget to turn it on. Maybe I'm just having a... It's being difficult. Okay, well, I guess I'll leave it off. Oh, wait a minute. It's decided to join me. There it goes. All right, sorry about that. Let's take a look here. Now that we are up on Windows, I'm going to go ahead and plug the internet cable into it. Now I know that all the setup has been completed correctly, so it's safe to plug into the network or to attach it Wi-Fi, whichever way you want to go. But up until now, I would not have done that for those reasons I've just explained. And when this connects to the network, you'll see down here in the bottom right, that will change to a little screen. And then you'll see the start menu propagate with your region settings, right? If you're in Europe, for example, you may not get a lot of this. And for many of these little shortcuts, they're not bloatware, they're just shortcuts. You just right click and within 2 seconds they uninstall. Like, I don't know why people make a big deal, or will spend hours working on a script to quote unquote debloat, when the script will take you, multiples longer to create that script, test the script, and then update the script every time Windows updates. And at some point, your debloating script will need to be debloated because it'll get so big. Trying to keep up with Microsoft is, well, if you're working at scale and you're using, doing a lot of installs of Windows, it may be worth your time to invest in something like that to optimize the process. But for a home user, unless you're just bored and looking for an experience, it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to spend 20 minutes to fix a 4-second problem. I'm going to go over here and set my resolution down to 1920 by 1080 so I can read it. There we go. And with that, let's look at our start. What am I looking at? We'll go right click on the start button. We'll go to System. And yeah, there's the AMD Ryzen 7 8845 with the 780M graphics. 32 gigs of installed RAM, 29.8 is available because the graphics card here needs some RAM and it's taken it from our system RAM. Now, this has Windows 11 23H2, so we're a year and a half behind on updates. But that's to be expected on an older model, and hence this is why the price is so attractive. And if we, once again, if we go right click on the start menu, go to our device manager, we can take a look at the details of who's making the network adapters, both wired and wireless. It looks like it's a Realtek LAN adapter and a MediaTek Wi-Fi 6E wireless with Bluetooth. The MediaTek can be swapped out if you, for whatever reason, want a different brand. That's a component when we take the feed off and take the screws out that you can change. You can also change out your RAM and your storage, and that's pretty much all there is, except you've got the two M.2 slots, and you can choose to add the M.2 the OCuLink adapter into that other M.2 slot if you want to. Other than that, it's pretty straightforward. There's not a whole lot to do with it because it's mostly already done for you, and it should last until it's time to replace it with a modern machine, say 6 to 10 years from now. Now, if I go to Windows Update in this, it probably will offer me 24H2, but we may have to get some updates prior to that happening. So I'll let this kick off that process. I'm going to turn this option on, and I'm going to come down here and turn these options on as well. And I want to make sure the machine doesn't go to sleep on me while we're here evaluating it. So I'll just type in edit, and you'll see up here edit power plan comes up, which is where I want to go. And yeah, they're both set to never. I'll put the display timeout to 3 hours. And I don't like this little cartoony thing down on the start button, so I type in search permission. I don't even have to type the whole thing. When the suggestion comes up for search permissions and history, go to the last option, turn that off. It gets rid of that. But I find it to be annoying. In the meantime, it's still been downloading those updates or checking for updates. Even though we closed the window, it's still running. So if I go back over here, I'll show you it's still, yeah, it's already started downloading and installing missing updates. Once we reboot this, at that point, it'll probably offer us 24H2. Now, this will happen over time automatically just from being plugged into the internet. It doesn't matter if you're using the computer. If the computer is turned on and connected, then it's doing all kinds of stuff online that you have no idea what's going on. And that's why it's important to have antivirus and firewalls. It's not just because you brought up a browser or didn't. It doesn't work that way. If the machine is on and that machine runs Windows and that machine is plugged into the internet, it already starts communicating with the internet right after the desktop loads, and things like Windows updates are being done. Any installed software may be checking for updates automatically, Adobe products, printers, etc. That's all normal operation. So when you think, oh, well, I'm turning it on, but I'm not using it, it is working in the background. It doesn't ask you your permission. It's adjusting temp files. It's adjusting the swap file. All these things are constantly going on in the background. It's more or less self-maintaining. In addition to the software you voluntarily add to the machine, they're likely also updating. Your browser, if you're using Chrome, is updating. This is all happening without you touching anything by simply having the computer on and connected to the network. Just so we're clear. Now, while this is updating, let me jump over to our chat room here. We'll go back to camera 1 and see if you guys have any questions for me and what I've been missing, since I've not been able to do this and pay attention to the chat at the same time. So I gotta spin the plates over here, and I come over and spin the plates over there. adding to the inside is for big boy PCs. If by big boy you mean older people that want to take what they learned years ago and continue to do it the same way today, then yes. Or there's certainly special case scenario where some, in general, businesses or end users have a specific, outside of an emotional, this is how I learned it and this is what I want, there are exceptions to why somebody may want a tower computer, or not even want, but require one. But they don't make up the bulk of computer sales for consumers today. They still make up a bulk of computer sales in businesses. However, I wouldn't call it big boy. I would call it maybe old boy. That's not derogatory. It's an observation. It's just another way you can look at it. There's nothing wrong with either way. Again, I'm here to represent the market and to keep myself in business. And the market is not from niche product. The market for me is a product that's going to sell in bulk. You know, if I'm selling a computer to a customer, that may only happen once every 8 or 10 years. So I need to have enough customers to keep me in business for the 8 or 10 years. Or I could have one business, and that one business can order that many computers in just 12 to 24 months, maybe not even that. So clearly, to stay in business in my line of work, it's really about being able to help as many people as possible, because there's not a lot of profit margin in this business. And repairs are starting to fade out because it's costing more to repair something and taking longer than simply replacing it immediately with a new warranty. And this is where we're at least on the business side of things. Now, where you as an individual are, you know, that's up to you. The a question regarding Windows 11. Windows 11's been out, what, 4, 5 years? It's not new anymore. There's no risk anymore. That risk usually happens when a product's introduced for the first year, whether it's a new CPU, you know, on a new platform, a new chipset on a new platform, some kind of new technology, a new operating system. So that happened many, many years ago. Our friend Mitch Morrison upgraded, when we built his newest machine, we put Windows 11 on it. He'd never had Windows 11 before. And after a couple days, he called me and he said, I don't know why I was so worried about Windows 11. It's not a big deal at all. I said, that's what I'm trying to tell people. They get all this worry and anxiety because they don't have any experience. They're taking what they're reading online, which is often clickbait generated to entice you to click on it so they get paid. And it's not that what they're saying is wrong, but it's very one-sided. It's like all you do is talk about the head of the coin. Well, the coin has another side to it. And these articles and YouTube channels, they very rarely refer to both sides equally. They only want to show the side that they see as negative, title it as such, this is negative. And it's up to you as the viewer to figure out what information has been omitted. What have they left out of here? So as we continue to focus on one side of that coin, it's important for you as a viewer to recognize that and to purposely seek out reviews for the other side of the coin. Wouldn't it be nice if a YouTube channel or an article written gave you both, instead of making the decision for you, allowed you to make the decision if it's good or bad, by giving you equal information of both sides, and for you to value that personally and individually once you understand that and you have the information. What you think is right and what I think is right isn't necessarily right, even if we don't agree. There could be a third person that thinks something else is right. This is where you fall into politics, where you have one side that strongly believes one way, another side strongly believes another way, and in both cases they're right, and in both cases they're wrong, and I don't think one side is superior to the other. I never have, and I never will. That's where we come into compromise. That's where we each give up a little something in exchange for something, and we're starting to live in a world of intolerance where people are going to say my way or the highway. And it's unfortunate. It's a degradation in our evolution when we no longer will consider anybody else's values. So I still maintain that today. I think it's your values that matter. And when I tell you about my values, I explain why I'm running a business and I'd like to stay in business. That's, if you were also running a business, I think you would probably come to the same conclusions, or you may have a different way of running your business, in which case, please share that with me, because from the way I see it, I don't have a choice. It's either adapt and go with, you know, what's selling and what the average consumer is buying, or stick to my guns, keep doing it the old-fashioned way until I don't have a business anymore. I'm not ready to give my business up yet, so I will continue to pivot and be flexible to the market changes so long as I can be. I have nothing against the mini PCs at all. More and more of my customers are getting them, and for the customers that are skeptical, I'm even offering them test drives. I'll put it in their office. I'll say, I'll tell you what, I'm not going to answer your question if it's good or not. I'll say, yes, I recommend them, but at the end of the day, will it meet your needs and expectations? There's only one way to know for sure. I'll come put one in at your office, and you tell me what, you know, if you have any concerns or issues, let's talk about it. And what do you think happens? They buy it. Every single customer I put one in, except for one, has bought them. And the reason that one customer didn't want it is he was afraid someone's going to pick it up and walk off with it. And I said, well, we could put a $9 Kensington lock on it. And I think it's an emotional thing. He's like, yeah, I just prefer the towers. I'm happy to sell you whatever you want. You want the towers? We'll sell you the towers. How was the performance on the mini PC? He says it was outstanding. How was the noise? I can't believe how quiet it is. It's truly amazing. You don't want to deploy them in the oven. He says, I just think someone's going to walk away with them. I go, well, they could just pick up your tower and walk away with that too. Yeah, but they'd have to work a lot harder. Look, I'm not here to change your mind. You've already considered all that. That's what you want. That's what you'll get. Thank you for trying it and evaluating it. We move on. One customer. That's all I've had so far that had no complaints. Couldn't believe how much power was coming out of it, and yet still didn't want it. That's hard for me to explain. I don't need to understand it to respect what they want. At the end of the day, that's my job. Sometimes customers don't know what they want. They see these little boxes, they go, there's no way that's any good. You've never had one before. It's just like Windows 11. Should I be worried about it? You need to install that and decide it for yourself when you're ready to have that experience. You can read articles that are all pro or all negative. The internet is an echo chamber, so if you start clicking on negative articles, it'll start presenting you with more. Until you yourself make that change, you're going to be fed exactly what they think you're going to eat, not necessarily what's good for you or a variety. You're just getting more of what you're asking for. That's the default. So unless you purposely go and change up the search to be the opposite, you'll never see the other side of it. Now, just because you don't see the other side of it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's been omitted. And if you don't think for yourself that I should purposely seek out the opposite view, then as far as you're concerned, there is no opposite view. Unfortunately, the world's way too complex today. And where people's values lie ultimately decide which information they want to read. I like to read both sides. I'm fascinated by the psychology of it. I love to see people praising one thing that the same exact thing other people are criticizing and saying is the worst thing ever. That fascinates me. So the minute I see some over-the-top praising, I immediately go to the over-the-top negating, and vice versa. I love that. I love to watch people try to force their opinions onto others instead of respecting it, instead of saying, hey, whether or not you agree with me doesn't change how I feel, and I respect the fact that you feel differently, and it'd be nice to have that reciprocated so we can agree to disagree, as the expression goes, without turning it into arguments and fighting. I don't know when we degraded our society, but I know growing up, that sort of understanding and that sort of assume a positive intent until given a reason. You know what I mean? Like, I assume everybody's intent is good. That's how I was raised. Don't assume the worst, somebody you don't even know. Don't jump to the negative first. Then when they give you a reason, that's different. You know, when they actually do something, but don't read into it in a negative way. Read into it in a positive way. And that's what I'm saying in my life. I'm seeing the shift of the assuming positive intent has become assuming negative intent. And then the respect of allowing other people to think differently makes those people your enemy if they don't believe what you believe or see the same values that you see. What a terrible downfall in our society. And this is a side effect of the internet, unfortunately. But it is still nothing I can change, but I can at least be aware of it. And then when I'm looking at information online and I'm watching human behavior in response, how it's changed from when I was a kid, I know not to bring up certain topics with people. Just overall, there's no point in it. There's no longer, unless you're with the right person, there's no longer a healthy discussion of different ideas. It now becomes, you think like I do, or you're a terrible person. And so what I'm trying to do when I showcase these mini PCs isn't to tell you that this is the right machine for you. Or if I talk about Windows 11, it's not for me to tell you it's time. That's Microsoft's job. But until you have your own experience to develop your own opinion, there's nobody's opinion that's going to replace yours. And the only way you're going to have one that matters is to have the experience. You can learn, for example, you could watch videos and say, how do I ride a bicycle? Read articles on it, watch videos on it. You are not going to know how to ride a bicycle until you get on the bicycle. There's no replacement for that. And if you're not willing to do it, you're just going to go through your whole life never really knowing and only believing in something that's, I don't know, maybe it satisfies you. That's all you need. That's fine. But you won't really know the truth until you get on the bicycle and figure out what balance is. You'll never really understand it. Nobody would say to you, for example, stay away from that pool until you know how to swim. How are you going to learn how to swim if you don't get into the pool? So there's this bizarre avoidance where we praise ourselves for avoiding bad things when we never actually tried it and don't know that it would have been a bad thing. And I see it more and more and more where people are afraid of negative experiences, so they have no experience at all. And then they pat themselves on the back for dodging a bullet when it could have been the best thing they ever did. But they'll never know because they never gave themselves a chance, because they voluntarily believed in something they saw or read online from usually a complete stranger. It has no relation to them, has no similar values and no similar experiences. But the conclusion is, well, I don't need to do that now. I saw somebody else do it. You are only hurting yourself if that's what you're going through life like. We're all here for a limited time. Make the most of it. I'm not suggesting being irresponsible and doing stupid things, but if you have an interest in something, a genuine interest, then only you can determine the value of what that interest means to you by having some experience with it. And that's what I encourage you to do. And especially when you've got 30-day free returns at Amazon, what have you got to lose? If you can't make up your mind in 30 days, it sounds like you like it. That's all I got to say. So when somebody says they don't like something based on an actual experience, I respect that a lot more than somebody warning me of or telling me how to do something that they've never done themselves. They just read it somewhere and then they just parrot it back out as though it actually has any value when they're not the author. They're just plagiarizing other people's work. And I find most of the time those people are completely turned around 180 degrees. They're reading an article from somebody who doesn't understand what they're writing about, but they don't know that. They read that article as if that person knew what they were talking about. They don't test it. They just go around repropagating the same misinformation. And at the end of the day, words are still words. And until you actually do something, and then you want to share your experience, that's where we want to hear. What was your experience? Because sometimes people have an experience because they used a product incorrectly. And when we can correct them, suddenly say, hey, this product is pretty good. Or other times they have a bad experience and it's just interesting, you know, that they see it that way. Again, I'm not trying to change anybody's mind, but I much more, me personally, much more value somebody's personal experience over what somebody saw or read online. So when it comes to Windows 11, try it and see for yourself. When it comes to mini PCs, if you're interested, the only way you're going to know if you like one, try one and see for yourself. Windows 11 can be fully uninstalled if you don't like it within 2 weeks. The mini PCs, when purchased from Amazon, most of them can be returned within 30 days, cost-free with a full refund for no reason, just because. So there's nothing to complain about. There's nothing to worry about. There is no anxiety. It is not justifiable. Either do it or don't. But just because of somebody else's actions, that should not change your pursuit of your own truth. And your truth may be very different from somebody else's. It doesn't mean you're wrong or right. But by denying yourself that opportunity because of what you saw or read online, you're only harming yourself. Mark Leibowitz said, all of my clients who bought mini PCs so far have loved them. In particular, they love regaining the space taken up. Sure. I mean, constantly my clients are running their office chairs into their tower computers. They get all scuffed up and banged up. Yeah. I had a Lian Li case designed where the power button was on top, and they would mash that power button so hard the clip that held it in place would break and the power button would fall inside of the machine. You know, the outside power button still looked the same, but it didn't touch anything underneath it anymore. And that used to be a service call to go in there and basically get a hot melt glue gun and glue that back. That's never going to be a problem here. I mean, no one's going to be putting the full force of their weight down on top of the button like they were on these Lian Li. It's like a PC99 tower. And it's usually not something we have a problem with on the front of the machine either. And then we had that 200R that had the bad reset button because someone kept pressing reset apparently until they broke it. The reset button here is going to require a special tool. The need to have to do that with any sort of crashing or system stability should be pretty much removed. Worst case scenario, you pull the power out of the back. You shouldn't even have to do that once, but in a bizarre fluke, you might have to cut the power. And you could cut the power by hitting a switch on a surge protector. You can hold the power button in for 10 seconds, or you can physically remove the plug from the back. This whole idea of using the reset switch, days of yore, man, I'm telling you. There is a BIOS reset, and that's for people that want to get in there and monkey around. If you don't get in there and monkey around, you should never need the BIOS reset. That's just a consequence of your actions. That is potential. And if you don't do that, that potential goes away. So decide which way you want to go and plan for it either way. That's all I'm saying. Just understand that there is a potential consequence that exists when you do certain things, not everything, with the computer. And if it's something that you think you can improve and make better by getting into the BIOS and messing around with settings, maybe you're right. But if you're wrong, you could make the machine very unreliable and frustrating to work with. Then you would need that little pinhole for resetting the BIOS. I've never met a normal user. When I say normal, I mean an average computer user, non-geeky, non-nerdy, ever get into a BIOS. They don't even know what it is. So if you want to go down that road, be prepared. That's all I'm saying. You might be successful, but in case you're not, be ready. Anyway, that's why you're seeing less and less of reset buttons. The fact that this has the reset, there's so many other ways to reset this, and the need to reset When's the last time you reset the computer you have? It's not like the old days. Phil Stodd said, I introduced mini PCs to our company, and everyone that has one thinks they're great, except for the service manager. His thinking is usually bizarre anyway. Well, if you're a service manager and you're accustomed to having to work on televisions that are powered by tubes, you know that you better have a lot of spare tubes on hand, and this is a routine item that's going to go out and you need to be able to service them. So when someone shows you a flat screen TV that has no tubes, and all you're thinking is this thing's going to be really difficult to service, it's because the information you have from before you're applying to the technology today, and it doesn't apply. But give him time, and it'll sink in. He'll realize that his concerns over service are absolutely unjustifiable, but he's never going to know. You have to give it time. He's had so many years of this one thing always happening this way, he wants to be ready. And now it's like, man, if that same kind of scenario happens here, this is going to be a lot harder. If they're built very different. So the requirements and why you would go in for service on those older machines no longer exists today. It's significantly reduced. And he's never going to believe that until he experiences it. So you just have to give him space. And after a couple of years, that whole thing's going to just, it'll just vanish naturally. It'll dissipate into nothingness and be forgotten. And so a new habit or a state of mind is created through repetition. Cognitive behavioral therapy is essentially what it is. And it does take repetition and time. Patrick T says, I'm strongly considering a mini PC to replace my gaming laptop by October this year, as long as it can run Second Life. If main PC were ever down, oh, so he wants it as like a backup machine. I don't know what the requirements of Second Life are, if anybody in the chat knows which mini PC will run that. Charlie Purdy wants to know, will you be reviewing the new Minisforum docking station? Yes, we do have one here. And when I get back to the X1AI, my intent is to use the docking station and throw a graphics card on it just to show you what a spider's web of cables, how messy it is. The graphics card will perform to the limit of the OCuLink port instead of to the graphics card's ability when it's plugged directly into a PCIe slot. And I don't believe, at least on the Minisforum, that we can use that for any other PCIe devices like a capture card. My understanding is that will not work. So I do want to demonstrate it. I do believe very strongly, I've predicted that I'm not going to like it and it's going to be not worth it. But as I say, until you actually try it, you never know. I might change my mind. Maybe there's something about it that I just don't know. And I don't know it. So even though I think it's probably going to be a demonstration of why you shouldn't be using it, at the same time, by doing that, there might be other areas for me to reconsider where the value is in that. But for right now, where I stand in theory, it sounds like a complete waste of money and a terrible idea. But I'm going to do it anyway. They did send us the doc, so we can evaluate it. And I'm already negative going into it. But I'm still open-minded enough to try it, just to verify if what I believe is true. Because otherwise, it's just a belief. And I need evidence. Al Galena with a $20 super chat. The local LA power company outages reset my PCs on a regular basis. Well, you can get a UPS, an uninterruptible power supply, which is essentially a battery backup that can kick in anytime you lose power. Been very fortunate, Studio A, Studio B, and Studio C. Very rarely have lost power. I think since 2007, we might have lost power 3 times. So Certainly less than half a dozen times. But I'd say 3 where it interrupted a broadcast. It's so rare. You know, with a battery backup, you not only have to buy the unit, but then you have to replace it about every 4 years. Whether you use it or not, the battery goes out just like a car. It's a lead acid battery. And if you don't change it because you're like, oh, my UPS still works good after 8 years, does it? You know, the best way to test your UPS, if you've had it more than 4 years, is simply unplug the UPS from the wall and see how long your computer stays on. Once that UPS is about 4 years old, you'll be lucky if your computer stays on 2 minutes. And every year after that, it'll be seconds. So just because the UPS isn't screaming and yelling at you to change the battery, doesn't mean that battery is good. And that's the best test, is to simulate a power outage by unplugging the UPS from the wall. While the computer plugged into it stays on, the computer should continue to stay on, and you should be able to get the same number of minutes or very close to it as you did when it was new. So when it's new, you might get 15 minutes to a half an hour out of it. When you're getting 2 minutes or less, you should have replaced that battery years ago. But ignorance is bliss, right? And then the batteries, you can't just throw those in the trash. You're not supposed to. You got to take them to a recycling center. They're heavy. You can buy knockoff batteries on Amazon. They're very easy to change out on most UPSs. And just do that every 4 years. And then it won't matter if the power goes out very often. Ryan, one full with $2 Canadian, says, greetings and happy Friday. Thank you, Ryan. Back at you, my friend. Nick Caffrey contributed €5. Sorry, Nick, I just saw that. He says, here's something to keep the Gatorade flowing. Thank you to Nick. He also renewed his membership. Now a member for 15 months here in our tech club. All right, let's see how we're doing over here on our updates. Is it still updating? No, it's waiting on a restart. Let's restart it and we'll check for updates again. I think on the next reboot, we will see the option to go to 24H2. So then I don't have to download the Windows Installation Assistant. On versions older than 23H2, Windows Update just doesn't work anymore. Then in order to upgrade it, you have to do the Windows 11 Installation Assistant. Just so you know. Phil Stodd said, our service manager told me his wife wanted a laptop with Linux. She felt Linux was more secure. My response was, if you want total security, disconnect the router. Total security. Yeah. Well, whatever people use for their justification is fine for them. If that's what makes them feel comfortable. You know, somebody might like memory foam and you might think memory foam is the most uncomfortable thing ever. That's a preference, you know. If you're tired enough, you'll sleep on a hardwood floor and you'll like it. Nick Poverman said, I'm watching on my big screen TV, but I didn't want you to know I was here. You didn't? Hope you're having a good Friday. Well, hey, Nick Poverman, thanks for saying hello. All right, let me go back over to camera 2 and see how our reboot's going. Still updating. Okay. Do you guys have any questions for me regarding computers? Let's just leave it at the subject of computers. Any questions at all? Since we're waiting here for these updates, will I go off on different squirrel modes? What's on your mind? Ryan says, I take it no one's using Windows 10 anymore. No, the vast majority of Windows users are still Windows 10 users. Windows 11 has not really, it has not yet become the leading operating system. I think Windows 11 is about 35%. So they got a ways to go. But this will change when Microsoft forces their hand in October. And certainly for people that resist even then, by 2026, it should be a pretty rare occurrence. We'll see. And Ryan with a $2 Super Chat says different strokes for different folks. Yeah, it's not a bad thing. Respect it. You want somebody to respect your choices, respect theirs. Get what you give. Andy wants to know what the cover of the machine. So Andy, I think maybe you joined us late. We went through a whole discussion of that, and I would just recommend you rewind the video. But it just summarize, that's the optional OCuLink port that's included in the box. And you have to either sacrifice your second M.2 slot for storage to use OCuLink, and there's a dust cover over it, because without the adapter in there, it's just a hole. John Williams says, thanks for sharing this mini computer. My CyberGeek mini PC still working well. Thank you. It's pretty rare that I hear from people that have a mini PC that's failed. It's happened, but it's rare. More than, I'd say, 96% of the mini PCs that I have deployed out to people, companies, etc., maybe 4% of them had an issue. The issue is on par with desktops. Like, the reliability rate seems to be about the same. And what I hear more is how much people are just still amazed by the mini PC months later, even years later. They're just like, they can't believe it. I can't believe this is still working. Yeah. So for the people that have never had one before, it's very easy to dismiss them for all kinds of made-up reasons. But my challenge to those people is show me those reasons still exist today. I do know those reasons were valid years ago with different products. This should be considered something different. You need to start at ground zero again and build up that trust. And as long as you dismiss it and never trust it, well, you're really just harming yourself. So, and again, that's why I keep emphasizing buying from Amazon, because you've got that 30-day return window, so there's no risk. You don't like it, send it back. Full refund. Our friend Ben Laird with a £2 super chat joining us from Scotland. Thank you, Ben. Oh, a shout out to our friend Buster, who's probably asleep right now, but I'm sure he'll watch this tomorrow morning when I'm asleep. So a shout out to our friend Buster in Bonnie, Scotland. Just thinking of him when I saw Ben Laird, who also joins us from Scotland. Art wants to know what mini PC is your favorite. Right now, my favorite mini PC is probably that X1 AI from Minisforum. That thing blows my mind. On the other hand, the X7 Ti is amazing. Anything that's got Atom Man on it, Atom Man, is Minisforum high-end division. There's nothing I don't like on the Atom Man, but they're pricey. The little mini ITX builds that Minisforum makes, amazing. I mean, you're asking me to pick one for me and my use, right? I'm not a gamer. I need to edit videos. I need a machine that can multitask, do a lot of things. That X1 AI is my personal favorite for my values. I love everything about it. And prior to that one, it was the MSO1. You see, I'm not pro Intel or pro AMD. I'm pro whatever is giving me the best value and the most innovation. Sometimes that's Intel and sometimes it's AMD. And sometimes Intel screws up and sometimes AMD screws up. That's true of everything in this life in manufacturing. So I always try to keep an open mind, and I'm always looking for where the best value is for my needs. Mark Gaines with a £10 super chat says for me to check my email. Yes, sir. Ron Barnish says, I have a Boss Game branded mini PC. It was a cheap one back then, about $100 and change, and it's working fine today. FM Lazar said, my Lenovo mini PC died after making a BIOS adjustment, and clearing the BIOS did not help. So that's a user-created problem. This is where we go back to the old school method of trying to get a little more power out of it is, for the most part, an exercise in futility, where even when you're successful, it makes such a minor difference. It wasn't, in my opinion, worth the risk. But when the ultimate price is paid, where the machine is sacrificed due to an unnecessary, I can't think of any reason why any legitimate user would go into a BIOS. It doesn't occur to me why anybody would do that. It's only the knowledgeable people, the nerds, the geeks, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but people comfortable with technology that get in there and mess with it. So if you bought that same machine and gave it to grandma, chances are grandma's machine would still be running great today. Then my question is, well, now who's got the faster one? But I don't know all the details here, but these kind of actions were justifiable years ago when certain BIOS settings weren't optimized, or you were willing to sacrifice your stability and reboot and keep testing and testing and testing until you found just the right balance between overheating and overclocking and, you know, all that other. And then all of a sudden, it's all happening automatically for you. The necessity to do that's it's just not there anymore, in my opinion. And these are the risks that you run if you get into them in ways that aren't something a common user would ever do, and then you experience problems a common user would never have. And I'm not discouraging you from doing it, but I am saying that if you go down that road, you open that risk. Oh, I was checking email. Let's see. What do we have? Oh, Mark Gaines with a $63 PayPal Super Chat contribution. Right on. Thank you, Mark. And oh, I missed a client call. Okay, so I'll have to give my client a call back here as soon as we're done. Hopefully I don't forget that. If you guys, again, if you have any questions for me, this is a good time to ask while we're waiting for the system to restart. Let me jump back over here just to see how it's doing. Oh, we're back at the desktop. All right, so let's go back over to Windows Update and settings. There's updates, and we'll check for updates here. I'm hoping 24H2 gets offered to us on this second check. Don't panic if it doesn't. Sometimes there may be a few other lingering updates. In this case, my prediction was accurate, and Windows 11 24H2 is now being offered automatically. This will take a while to install, and you don't have to sit here and stare at it like we're doing right now. This is a good time to go watch some TV or go run some errands and just let the machine run. Once you get it done, you only have to do it once until 25H2. That's usually an annual update from Microsoft that occurs sometime in the fall. Newsfan said, I work for a poor public library. We have 15 public computers and no funds to buy new for Windows 11. Any thoughts? Those kind of decisions are made by your city council. And so your city council would have to decide how they would proceed. It's nothing I can help you with. Even if I had the answer, you would not be able to implement that. Government, like libraries, things of that nature, they have to be run through councils and budgets. And an outsider can't come in and change that. Just so you know, that's got to be dealt with internally, unfortunately. Or Gaines said he had to do an RMA on his graphics card. His GPU stopped working. He had a faulty HDMI port. Wow, that's unusual. And let's see, Mark Leibowitz said he's got another client who got an underpowered B-Link U5-9 as a gift and was similarly unhappy with it. I convinced her to try an Ace Magician model with much better specifications, and she's very happy with it. Well, sure, I don't mean to imply also, by the way, that all mini PCs are good mini PCs. Depending on how much money you're spending, there are some unscrupulous sellers out there selling some models of mini PC that are 4 and 5 years old that are not Windows 11 compatible, but they forced Windows 11 on them. Some having eMMC memory, which if I see that, I'm running the other way. That's very slow storage. I would run far away from that. Just that one, that's a big red flag. Stay away from it. And then if I'm not familiar with the CPU, they're saying, hey, this has got an Intel J5010 or something. I just Google, is J5010 Windows 11 compatible? More the times than not, you're going to find out that CPU you never heard of before, that's an old CPU that is not Windows 11 compatible. And then if you order it with Windows 11, right, it'll come with Windows 11, but that's because they forced it on, and it's not Windows 11 compatible. What I believe, and again, I can only speculate, but what I think is going to happen is you've got people running Windows 11 on computers that are not Windows 11 compatible. And over we say you shouldn't be doing it. And over they say the same thing. There's no side effect. It's running fine. I feel like I'm having a conversation with a bunch of people who are smoking. And I say, you know, that's going to cause lung cancer. Been smoking for years. Don't have any lung cancer, Carey. Just keep going. Give it time. Here's what, and again, I'm speculating, but this is what I think Microsoft is going to do. I think on October 14th, when Windows 10 support ends, then any Windows 10 compliant computer will also, I believe, and I could be wrong, no longer get support for Windows 11 that you're getting now. So in other words, if I have a machine here that was Windows 10 only, and I did not upgrade it to Windows 11, I still be getting updates until October 14th of 2025 this year. And if I upgrade this to Windows 11, even though it's not Windows 11 compatible, and I'm using a fictional, not this actual, obviously this is Windows 11, but I'm saying if I had another mini PC that was not Windows 11 and I forced it on there, I'd still be getting the updates just as I would with Windows 10. But I believe, and I could be wrong, the way Microsoft is going to work this is when that Windows 10 support ends, regardless if you have Windows 10 or 11, if your computer is not Windows 11 compliant, that's when I believe the updates are probably going to stop for you. The same as they would have if you'd have just left Windows 10 on it. So all of that was a big waste of your time. I could be wrong, but if I was Microsoft, that's what I would do. Because Microsoft's been warning. They've been saying, look, if you put Windows 11 on non-compliant hardware, there's going to come a day where you're not going to get updates anymore. Features aren't going to work anymore. And they've not specified when that day is. But if it were me, it would be the same day it was going to end anyway on Windows 10. We'll wait and see if I'm right or wrong on this. And it's not a competition. It's just my technical speculation that makes the most amount of sense to me. And we'll see how it plays out. In the meantime, you know, if you want to take that risk and use non-compliant hardware to force Windows 11 on, that's your business. I respect that. But for my clients, I can't put the liability on me and the inconvenience to my clients to roll those dice that potentially impacts the ability of them doing business and helping their customers. It also doesn't make me look too good in their eyes if I allow that scenario to happen. If a customer absolutely insists that I take that liability on, I have no choice but to walk away. I just can't do it. Can't jeopardize the entire business for all of my customers because of the actions of one customer. I have to cut my losses with that customer and say, you know, you're welcome to come back. It's not personal. When you're ready to do it the right way, then my company can take you on. It's sort of like an insurance company that won't insure something you've got that seems like it's likely going to need a payout or some maintenance cost where the insurance company is going to lose money on the deal. Maybe you own a pit bull and a home insurance company says, we're not insuring your home because of the dog breed you have. I don't agree with it. It's like dog racism. But the business decision, it's not like, well, we don't like you. It's just, these are the rules. This is how the business runs. And so in the same way, keeping that Windows 10 after support ends, I can deal with that for a few months. But when we hit 2026, I can't let it go any further than that. At that point, the customer needs to either find somebody else for their maintenance or let me go ahead and get them up to spec, not only for their best interest, but for mine. Filament on Fire says, I love Minisforum mini PCs. I own 8 of them in total, but I did have 2 of them that died. One they replaced under warranty, and one was just over the 1-year mark. Yeah, that can happen. It's pretty unusual, though. I appreciate you sharing your experience with us, though. That means a lot. Again, hearing from actual experience carries a lot more weight for me than I read somewhere somebody said this or did that. Maybe they did. I read somewhere I'm 10 feet tall and weigh 400 pounds. So, a lot of weight that carries weight. There's a joke in there somewhere. John Paul Bacon said, from what I've been seeing at Amazon, the Atom Man mini PCs look like higher end desktop replacements that could go head to head with desktops, maybe even in AAA gaming. Absolutely, yeah. A couple of them have built-in graphics, like the G7 Ti has a built-in NVIDIA RTX 4070. And then they have the Atom Man, the one with the red and blue. It's got AMD Radeon mobile graphics chip. Is it 6700 XT? Yeah, they can absolutely go straight on in with AAA game, and that's what they're designed to do, but they're also priced accordingly. Jason Wyrick stops in to say hello. Hey, welcome in, Jason. Jason's asking if Windows 7 had a media creation tool that was bootable. Windows 7 was like, I think I was in my late 30s when Windows 7 came out. That was a long time ago. When did Windows 7 come out? (2009), so 16 years ago. So I would have been 41. If you're asking me anything about something 16 years ago, I can't remember. I have no idea. One of the downsides of technology advancing so much, so quickly and so often is a lot of the older technology I haven't seen or used in years, I've more or less forgotten. It's that space in my head has been used for the latest. And because it's not slowing down, as we get more complicated into, well, these are NVMe drives, and this is Gen 3 and Gen 4 and Gen 5, and now there's going to be a Gen 6. We're already working on PCIe Gen 7 standards at this point. Then you've got Wi-Fi 6, 6E, and 7. You've got all these different numbers and standards that keep advancing. USB, 3, 3.1, 3.2, 3.2, Gen 2 by 2, USB 4. And that's current, right? So that stays kind of right there on the surface. Everything else just keeps sinking deeper and deeper until I just can't reach it anymore. It might still be in there somewhere, but I can't remember. No idea. Nor do I care, because that information, apart from trivia, it wouldn't matter to me these days whether it did or it didn't. Art wants to know what I think about Intel graphics cards. I mean, I don't have an issue with them. And again, it depends what you need. I think you get a good solid value if what you're looking for when it comes to a mid-range gaming PC compared to what the equivalent NVIDIA or AMD would cost you to get that level of performance. The Intel at that level is going to save you some money. I don't see any quality issues. I don't really hear about any driver issues. So yeah, I've got nothing bad to say about them. Now, if you want just the fastest thing possible and you're willing to open the wallet to the maximum amount of expense, Intel doesn't compete on that side. But that doesn't mean they're not a good value. FM Lazar said, I've owned 3 mini PCs, a Lenovo, an HP, and a Mac Mini, and only Lenovo has gone south. That's not a very big sample size to come up with any conclusion over manufacturing quality or performance. Lenovo, I think, makes more mini PCs than HP or Mac does. So the odds are there's more of them out there. So if 1% of those fail, that's going to be a bigger number than if 1% of HP's minis or Mac minis. You're going to see a higher failure number at the same percentage range, 1%. Food for thought. But, you know, if there's a brand that you're convinced you don't like them, don't buy them anymore. You know, there's the great thing about the market is at the end of the day, we have choices. And for whatever reason you make your choice, it could be a bad experience, or it could be, for me anyway, it's about value. And one company can offer better value for a little short time, and then another company, complete competitor, offers better value for a short time, and then these things go back and forth. So I'm not aware of any mini PC brand to really avoid. There's nothing here I'm advising you to stay away from, but I also suggest that if you're working with a brand you've never worked with before, make sure you buy from like Amazon, a place where you have that ability for a trouble-free, cost-free return within a certain period of time, so you have time to evaluate it for your values. Because at the end of the day, what one person thinks is trash, another person is going to think is treasure. That's, you know, pretty much the way it is in life with everything. You don't believe me, just go on eBay or Facebook Marketplace. There's a lot of trash. People are buying it. What are you gonna do? I don't know. Lana Dro said that she uses her mini PC often to watch webinars and Zoom. Yeah, well, that's a very minimal use. Jose Loza says, I learned to build my PCs from watching your channel. Now I have a 3-year-old mini Geekcom PC. It's running well. Thank you, Mr. Holzman. I've really liked the Geekcom PCs. I just haven't liked their pricing. I think they're a little bit pricier than other models, but other than that, I don't have anything negative to say. Eugenio Dago received a TrigKey mini PC from us, and he says that continues to work perfectly. Nice. Well, thanks for the update. Glad to hear you're enjoying it. Mecha Cameron says, I want my first mini PC to be an Asus because I have 2 Asus laptops. Yeah, and you know, that's a valid reason. You want to stick with one brand. For me, again, my reasoning is in value. And Asus does not have good value. They're pricey. Now, they do sell good stuff. I've always compared Asus to like, well, here in the US, I don't know where else they're sold. There's a company that makes cookies and crackers called Pepperidge Farm. And they are pricey cookies and crackers compared to other brands. But what's in the bag is always delicious. In fact, you get a pretty small bag at a pretty high price, but it's delicious. And that's not to say I couldn't buy the store brand for a fraction of the price and still be happy with the purchase, or that it wouldn't be delicious. But Pepperidge Farm is consistent. They don't make a bad product, in my opinion, and they don't make a cheap product. That's the way I see it. ASUS. ASUS makes good products, but you know, their mini PCs are some of the most expensive I've ever seen outside of the world of Apple. That's what holds me back, is the price. Mark Gaines said Windows did not have a media creation tool until Windows 10. Yeah, I want to say, could we download Windows 7 ISO and make our own CD? I think you could, but you had to use a third-party piece of software. Or maybe you could right-click and choose to write the image. I can't remember. Does it matter? I don't know. Thing One says hello from Cape Cod. Welcome in. Drake wants to know, if I use an i7 Ultra K model, how much RAM will it use? Well, if I buy an 8-cylinder BMW, how much gas will it use? Kind of depends on how you drive it, right? If you're asking the onboard RAM, if you're saying I'm using a mini PC with built-in RAM, and it doesn't matter if it's Intel or AMD, if it's a mini PC, a laptop, or a desktop, if you're using built-in RAM, the amount of shared memory is configurable in the BIOS. Usually it's just set to auto, where it will use more when it needs more. But overall, it's not something you should worry about, because one way or the other, you'll typically have more RAM than you're going to use, regardless if you're using onboard video or not. So if you don't have a problem and you're not having a negative experience, there's nothing I can do to help you solve an issue that doesn't exist. If and when you have a PC that you're having what you believe is RAM-related problems, let us know the details of the PC and what the problems are, and then we can verify if that's RAM-related or not, along with offering you a solution. But you're trying to put a cart before a horse. It's like you're trying to fix a problem you don't have, and what I'm trying to suggest is that you would never have that problem to begin with, and you're asking a question that you would never ask in reality, because there'd be no reason to ask it. The bottom line is that when you're using integrated graphics, it's using the minimal amount of RAM it needs for how you're using the machine at any given time, and it's all happening automatically. The human being no longer has to guide the computer like the old days. The computer just takes care of itself. Just let it do its job. It overclocks itself. It automatically assigns the amount of memory needed at any given time, and it will use virtual memory as needed. Should you run into a rare circumstance where you run out of RAM, which would be very unusual, you'd never know it, because it'd be just swapping it out to your very fast NVMe drive, which isn't really noticeable these days. Back on mechanical drive days, it would be very noticeable, but now it's such a non-issue that unless you actually can present to us a present problem other than your imagination, then we cannot present to you an answer other than our imagination. Becca Cameron said he was burning CDs in 2006. Yeah, well, CDs came out in the 90s, so it's pretty pricey to get a CD burner. It had to be in the late 90s. They were like $150 a piece, and then the blanks were like $2 each. Yeah, good old days. Frank Jimmy says hello, joining us in the chat. Eddie Sawyer said he quit smoking cigarettes. Good for you, Eddie. Think of the money you're saving. Let alone the health benefits, right? Go right to the priority. Essential working too hard says he got the memory leak and crash on the Brave browser. That happens in the YouTube live chat for all of us. Not much we can do about it, but it's If you're joining us in the live chat, if your browser should crash on you, that's nothing you can fix. It's a YouTube problem. You can refresh or reload the page. It should put everything right back. I think I might have missed some questions here. If you've asked a question and I've not addressed it, it's because I haven't seen it. Go ahead and post it back in the chat, and I'll do my best to provide an answer for you if I have an answer. And Mecha Cameron says, looks like I'll be getting a mini PC in the next few months. I think everybody will be getting a mini PC. If you've got a desktop now, I think it's just a matter of time if you want to continue in that, having a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse. It's a much more affordable option. You get a lot more for your money than sticking with the old school desktops. I foresee that if that's your frame of mind, that you still want to have your monitor, keyboard, and mouse separately, you're probably going to go with a mini PC at some point. So going back to the desktop again, if you have certain requirement, typically gamers or enthusiasts with deep pockets kind of fall in the same category as gamers. Got to have those deep pockets, and you've got to have the time. And I've got to tell you, the games I've seen lately don't look at all fun to me. And I am so glad that that I grew up in an era of the arcade. You put a quarter in the machine, all the controllers were the same, all the frame rates were the same. There was nobody who could buy their way into beating you with a better internet connection or whatever. We all use the same controller. We all use the same height of that controller. We played with the same screen. If you had more quarters and you could practice more and get better, that was the only way you were going to beat anybody. I miss those days where the individual and the amount of time and effort they put into it made for a better player. Today, if you've got deep pockets and you can buy better hardware, you can outplay somebody who isn't, or may have a similar skill in the game. Let's say you've got the same amount of practice time and skill level, but one person's got better hardware, deeper pockets, faster, less pingy internet connection. It's not a fair playing field anymore. And then on top of that, you can still have your butt kicked by a 6-year-old using 10-year-old gaming PC who's learned how to adapt their skill to what they have because they don't know any better. Yes. Yeah. It's frustrating when someone can have a different controller than the controller you have to play the same game on the same level at the same time. And you're at an unfair advantage. It has not really a whole lot to do with your skill. So it's hard to know when you're being beaten in a game if somebody's cheating or somebody spent more money to give them an advantage. In the arcade, you put your quarter in, and there's just no way around it. You had to put in the time. Or you had a natural talent, which was pretty unusual for a video game. And it was just a much more fair playing field. John Paul Bacon says, is the Minisforum docking station we're going to review, is it the MGA1? I think so. Is that what it's called? What is your interest in, this is the second time you've asked about it, so I'm just curious, what are your plans or your interest in that docking station? I'm assuming you're asking because you're interested in buying it, and so my question is, why would you do that versus, say, building a traditional gaming tower? Jose wants to know if I still take old computers to the desert and shoot them. Well, the desert is getting further and further away. The population of the Maricopa County, where Phoenix is located, is growing outwards. It's like a circle. It's almost like a fire, and it's just destroying any natural habitat as it expands outward. Phoenix is, or Maricopa County, is the 5th most populated in the United States. And that getting to the desert isn't a 20-minute drive anymore. Going out to the desert is now an hour and a half. And it's too much trouble, it's too much effort. A lot of the places where we used to do that are now housing subdivisions that doesn't even look recognizable to what it once was. So unfortunately, you know, unless I move towards the outskirts, which I have no plans of doing, it's too much of an effort to get out there and find a place that's safe to do so. So something else that's changed with the times. Now, of course, if I were to live in a more rural area, somewhere more woodsy, the more private, not in a big urban area, it'd be a different story. But yeah, the city just every year is bigger. And I mean, just me going to another town on the other side of Phoenix, many times I don't even recognize it. It's even stuff they built, they've already torn down and replaced. That building, they just built it, it's gone. It was right there. When I got this, my first computer repair job was in 1991. It was on a road called Chandler Boulevard. And if you made a right turn off of the freeway, you'd go a couple miles and Chandler Boulevard was all dirt road. The building I worked at, you'd make a left turn and then you'd make like your first right turn. So it was right off the freeway. And it was a pretty new 2-story construction facility, a big 2-story building. It had loading bays and everything for the trucks to back into, and the tinted glass windows, very modern, recently built building, probably was built in the late 80s. That building's been demolished, and now I think it's a hotel. Like, it's so unrecognizable. The dirt road has long since been paved and lined with trees. It's like, what? Where am I? Now, that is granted a span of over 30 years, but nonetheless, even the Intel facility that I used to work at, also off Chandler Boulevard, completely unrecognizable to me. I don't recognize anything around it. And then even finding the building is hard. And it's a series of 5 interconnected buildings because they've got a whole different parking lot and they've got all this stuff, greenery and such, where it's no longer obvious to me where it is. I have to like drive and look to my left and like, was it here? Have I passed it? I'm not sure anymore. So Phoenix is a city that's constantly growing. It has been since my family moved here from Detroit. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger. Just when you think it's not going to get any bigger, nothing's slowing it down. I don't know where all the water is coming from or when it's going to run out, but hopefully that won't happen in my lifetime. It'll be somebody else's problem. So trying to get out of society, get away from where the population is getting to be a longer and longer drive. At some point, you're basically getting closer to California. You know, you're getting closer to Yuma. And even Yuma, which is just, my opinion, a very challenging place to live. It's extraordinarily hot and quite desolate, isn't as desolate anymore. It's growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And Laird wants to know if I can still get a case that takes a DVD drive. I am sure there's probably a few out there. What's available in the UK, I don't know. Whether you can or not, they're still going away. So I got to tell you, I've got a USB DVD drive. It can read and write CDs and DVDs no differently than an internal drive. And when you plug it into a USB 3 port, it runs no slower. I don't understand why I'd want it permanently built into the computer. There's a $5 price difference to get the external DVD drive. There's no performance difference. There's no reliability difference. And you can just keep using it from computer to computer, mini PC or laptop to desktop. You don't have to buy 3 separate drives. You just have the one. So that's what I do. I just use a USB DVD. And again, with USB 3, it runs exactly the same speed as if it were internal. I don't see any reason why you'd want to go internal anymore. It's like asking me if you can still buy a wagon wheel. I suppose, but why would you? There's much more advanced technology than wagons. If you want to keep using it, you know, I'm sure there's a seller out there. Yes, you can probably find one. John Paul Bacon said he's asking about the GPU dock because he's doing research on a possible upgrade for a system. He wants to see what he might be able to compare it with. Well, generally speaking, the external GPU docks require their own power. You have to run a cable. In this case, it would be OCuLink, right? But sometimes it could be USB 4 Thunderbolt. So you power a Thunderbolt cable, and then you've got to have an exposed graphics card, unless you get an enclosed, you know, a GPU enclosure, which then you could run into heat issues. It adds a lot of weight. You're going to have to plug it in separately from the computer, cable everything up, and then you're going to ultimately spend more for that than if you just bought a desktop and plugged your graphics card right into it. You won't have to buy an additional power supply. You won't have an additional power cable. You won't have all the wires exposed or the graphics card exposed, and the graphics card will perform to its ability versus performing to the ability of the connector. So in my opinion, I can't imagine why anybody would want it other than because they think it's cool. It's not a good price. It's not good performance. It's a mess of cables. And it's just everything's downsides. I don't see any. If anybody can point out an upside to this, I'd like to know what it is. If it's not cheaper and it's not as fast and it requires more cables to get less, to spend more, why would you even consider it? What solution does that provide to you that you couldn't get out of, even a mini ITX computer build would be cheaper. Now, if what you're looking for is a docking station, because you have a lot of stuff you want to plug in, so maybe you get a Thunderbolt docking station and you want to, say, take the computer home, and all you do is unplug it from the docking station, take it home, plug it into the docking station at home, and your keyboard, your mouse, your monitor, all that, your printer, all that's plugged into the docking station. So all you do is you take your mini computer, bring it to the office, plug it into the docking station, and all your peripherals are hooked up. It's a lot easier. We used to use those a lot with laptops, where people would take a laptop home, they'd come back to the office and they'd want to plug it into the docking station, which was already pre-connected to monitors and network and all that stuff. That I get. But the whole external GPU thing, I just don't understand. You know, when we build mini PCs now that can take a graphics card, full-size graphics card, that are all enclosed safely, use one power cable, and get the full performance of that graphics card and ultimately cost less, I don't know why I'd want to spend more to make it look worse, be exposed to the environment, and then underperform to its ability because of the throughput of the limitation of the cable. Yeah, just having a hard time. Again, I've never used one, but I'm picturing it in my head and it just doesn't make any sense to me. For all that time and all that money, you could have just built a regular desktop or micro ATX, mini ITX. Minisforum does have a docking station coming out, and it's for Thunderbolt because, you know, it's got a lot of data throughput. You need that high bandwidth Thunderbolt port for that to work. And when they introduce that product or release it, I think it's been introduced, but they said they will send us one to evaluate. Now, I personally don't have any need for a docking station. but I could certainly see where that would benefit some people to have that. Some people, they get intimidated by all the cabling. So if you can just hook all the cabling up for them and all they do is just plug into the docking station and then everything's already hooked up externally, yeah, that would definitely remove that barrier for that customer to say, you know, well, that's too much trouble, because that's nothing to plug in a cable. Samuel says, Carey, I bought a GMK Tech mini PC. It's a Ryzen 9, Windows 11 Pro, and it's a cute little thing. You know, not only should it be cute, it should really perform well, and hopefully it's not very loud. They're very impressive in how much power and performance they deliver for the cost compared to if you built one yourself, right? If you built a traditional desktop, you'd probably spend somewhere near twice the amount of money to get basically the same performance. So that tends to be the overall consensus from people. They very rarely ever regret ever going to a mini PC, but they're almost always skeptical that anything that small is anything other than a toy. And yet, once they get their hands on it, they still can't believe it. They're like, this is crazy. Let me take a look at how we're doing on our 24H2. I don't think we're going to wait for that to finish. We're already a little over today. It is Friday, so you know we'll go a little over, but I'm not necessarily looking for taking this any further today. Obviously, to take it apart, 4 rubber feet, 4 screws, lift the bottom off. Be careful. They're saying that there's wires attached to it. I haven't verified that, but always be careful when removing the bottom. And the best advice I can give you is order this the way you want it, and you should never have to take the bottom off throughout the entire life of the machine. And by the life of the machine, I'm talking about it's the life of any other computer. So if you can get 10 years out of it, that's it. If you're trying to get to year 15 or year 18, you're out of your mind. And it wouldn't matter, in my opinion, if it was a desktop or a mini. You're long obsolete by then. It should have long ago been replaced. The idea that you would need to upgrade anything in this, apart from adding the OCuLink port, I'm not on board with it. I just feel like get it the way you want it, keep it sealed up, and your odds of having a problem with this go down significantly. But if you want to get in there and monkey around with it, they allow you to do that. You absolutely can. And if you make the machine better and you spend more money to do that and you're happy, I'm happy. But if you get in there and you inadvertently cause some harm, you caused it. So if you don't do that, there's a 100% chance it's never gonna, you're never gonna have a consequence from doing something you didn't need to do, in my opinion. But if you do something you didn't need to do because you feel like you want to, and that turns out to have a consequence, then that's a unique consequence that you created. So they offer you that option to make that choice. And I'm not saying everybody who opens it is going to have a negative consequence. But what I am saying is those of you who never open it will likely never have a negative consequence. The odds go way, way down of anything bad happening. So it's up to you. It's your money and it's your equipment. When it comes to like office PCs, customers are not allowed to open those PCs up. They're under a maintenance contract. If they start monkeying around with their computers, they're their computers. I don't own them. But if they're making changes that I haven't authorized and then they call me to fix that, that's billed separately. That was not part of our contract for me to clean up your messes. That's just trying to stay in business. I just can't afford to do the work that doesn't need to be done, that they're creating work for me. It's specified in the contract. That's not what I do. If you allow me to do my job, then when you have a problem with the computers, you call me. You don't try and fix that yourself. And then if there's any consequences, they're my consequences that I have to deal with at my cost. And that's how the business works. And that's why I give you that same advice as though you were my client. I'd say, you're paying me for this. So in other words, if you're paying for a new computer, there should be nothing for you to fix. If you feel like there's something you need to fix, send it back and order one that you don't need to fix. I'm trying to say, at least if you want a higher probability of having a computer that's trouble-free. The minute you think you need to fix it, to me, that computer doesn't meet your needs and was the wrong machine. You shouldn't have bought that machine. If it's something that you enjoy and you have fun with it, I have to tell you, when customers call me when their computers don't work, rarely are they in a good mood and enjoying it. So that's why I offer the advice I do, because of the interactions I'm used to having from people who, when they call and need help, they're usually pretty stressed out. And if we can avoid them from being stressed out, they really appreciate it. With that same logic, I'm telling you how you can avoid being stressed out. But I realize some of you like that. So do with that information what you will. But that's why I say what I say. There is a logic and a reasoning. By default, I want people to have a great experience with using the computer. If you enjoy opening them up and tinkering with them, maybe you should consider doing that for a living, because that'll fix that problem. All right, I think that's going to wrap it up for today. My thanks to the folks over at Minisforum. Now, we did go and buy this from Amazon, by the way. We paid for it the same as you would. In fact, I don't think I even showed the Amazon page on this. Let's take a quick look over at the link we have in the video notes will take you right here to Amazon. And you'll see it's got a price of $584, but there's a $120 coupon. And when you apply that, you're down to what, $460? That's a really great price. When you consider just how much, wait a minute, that's the other one. That's last week. We have the UM. Okay, when you click on our link, it's going to take you to last week's NAB9 and this week's UM880. It's basically a very similar Intel versus AMD mini PC around the same era, close to the same price. This one is a little bit more. This is a $120 coupon off of a price of $640. So we're looking at what, $520? So it's about $50 more. And again, the Intel version here, it's the same size RAM, but it's DDR4. Over here, it's the same size RAM, but it's DDR5. Over here, you've got two Ethernet ports right there that are 2.5 gig with OCuLink. And over here, you have one Ethernet port, and the OCuLink is a card you have to add to the secondary M.2. But over here, you don't have a secondary M.2 because the OCuLink port is permanently wired in. And it's not wired in through an M.2 that you can remove. It's soldered down. You cannot take it out. And for that reason, there is a price difference, and the processor's a little different. CPU speed is 5 gigahertz here, and 5.1 is a little bit faster. The onboard video with AMD for gaming is better, far better than the onboard video with Intel for gaming purposes. So they're very similar. The NAB9 has that lid you just press down on, it pops open. No screws needed or rubber feet need to be removed. The UM880, you've got to remove the rubber feet, take out the screws to get to it. So it's a little more complicated to get into versus just a lid you push down and pops up with no tools. So they're very, very similar and yet have their differences. And which one that you prefer, they're both great machines. I see Amara has appeared from the office in hiding.
I just wanted to apologize. I fixed the link.
Oh, it should not be defaulting to that?
That was my fault.
Well, I think people need to know, on Amazon, they both share the same product page. And if you don't pay attention to that little switch deal, the little options, if you want to compare them side by side, it's chocolate or peanut butter. They're both delicious.
Yeah, they're both delicious. Yeah, for sure. And I did fix the link. So if you do Amazon like now, it'll take you to the right model. That particular one. Like Carey said, they're both delicious, so enjoy.
I haven't heard this thing the whole time it's been on. I've never even, I mean, I can barely hear the fan.
Well, this one and the NAV 9 Plus are really capable machines.
And again, we bought the unit. I have no reason to tell you that for me to praise this or for me to put it down. I'm just calling it as I see it, keeping in mind how much money we're spending. I challenge you to find or build a machine this capable and build it at a cheaper price. I don't think you can get anywhere near that price. You'd be several $100s, having to buy the case, the power supply, the Wi-Fi, the CPU, the cooler, the storage, the RAM, and then the operating system. You're getting all of that for that price versus you spec that out piece by piece and build it yourself. It's your money. So that's where my attitude comes from. It should be calculatable, not emotional. Where you can say, okay, if you take all this money to build something equivalent, this is how much it'll cost. You can get it in a smaller package. It's way more portable, already built, ready to go, and it costs less. That's the logic that's, as far as I'm concerned, verifiable. Now, what that means to you personally in value, I can't speak for you, but I can tell you when it comes to value, for this price and this much power in that small of a quiet package, it's a no-brainer. Again, Amazon has those 30-day returns. I can't keep emphasizing that enough. So you should have no anxiety of what if. Worst case scenario, send it back. Really should be no big deal, no expense to you, and a full refund. So if you end up getting a mini PC or this mini PC, love to hear your experience. Once again, you would have no bias any more than what I have. So if you liked it, if you didn't like it, what did you like? What didn't you like? We'd love to hear from you, from your unique perspective. You can leave your comments in the your feedback in the comment section below the video. We have been working with Minisforum a lot. Like I said, we've got the GPU dock to test, and then we've got a docking station, presumably that'll be sent to us. And so a shout out and a thank you to them, because I enjoy working with a company that's always innovating in the space, and they're a respectable manufacturer that doesn't charge an arm and a leg, Apple. And I'm happy to show off their products there and show you guys, introduce you guys to some options that have never been more affordable. Of course, thanks to Mara for all the hard work she does in the background, all the administrative tasks that she does. And our friends over at SCD Keys, of course, where we get our coupon. We have a coupon code CAREY that'll give you 30% off their already really inexpensive prices for legitimate, legal, authorized Windows and Microsoft Office license keys. With the coupon code CAREY, you get 30% more off. To be clear, I don't make a commission on this. I'm trying to do things for my viewers that's right, that I feel is the right thing to do. And I know a lot of people are not accustomed to that on a YouTube channel. It's the same thing I do for my real life customers. And remember, my YouTube channel is an extension of my real life business where I'm held accountable and liable. And most YouTube content creators in this space just do this for fun. They enjoy it. They're enthusiasts. And a lot of things they do are very impractical, and they're not held accountable should anything go wrong by a customer who's paid the money, right? That's the uniqueness I offer. It's not better or worse. It's just something different from what you typically see. And if you appreciate that, well, I hope you'll consider supporting us here so we can continue to be free of typical YouTube sponsorships where corporations tell us what we have to say, or we have to get their approval before we can show you anything. I don't want to do that. All I'm trying to do is just give you an insider's look in the PC repair business. That's why we have so many other PC repair business, both techs and business owners that join us in our chat, and try and give you a more practical look at the reasoning that goes on between costs and then customer expectations. If it were just me being an enthusiast, the only one I'd have to please is myself. But when you're paid essentially to meet the needs of somebody else and you fail to do that or there are consequences, you will be held accountable and liable for those. Making it right or forced compensation for the damage you cause. That doesn't happen with an enthusiast. An enthusiast just having fun. Nothing wrong with that. There's an overabundance of enthusiasts online here on YouTube versus actual techs showing you their work. So folks like, Doug Betts, live Windows training with Doug Betts, Mike's unboxing reviews and how-to there in England, Salem Techsperts out there in Massachusetts. These are real repair shops and real technicians. And I can name them on one hand, the ones I know and I follow. The big channels that you likely know of, those aren't techs and likely have never ever been techs. Again, nothing wrong with that. Nothing's inferior or superior, but the perspective is different in how they present. And it's great to have choices as a viewer to understand why somebody's making their content. And for you to then evaluate that accordingly. But there's no shortage of enthusiasts. That space is long oversaturated, and I would not want to add to that. So if all I was going to do was be an enthusiast, I'd probably keep it to myself. I don't need to add. But back in the day, when I first started this channel in 2008, it felt like there was a giant gap here on YouTube showing real practical work in the PC tech space. And I still feel like that gap is still pretty big. And I still search out other tech employed based channels, people that actually work in tech, that have customers, that also run a YouTube channel. That's, for me personally, that's what I love to find channels like that. So if you know any, yeah, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you to all of our members, as always, for enabling us to continue our independent reviews and just our overall independence of the channel and the direction of it. It's our viewers who are our sponsors here. And specifically our members. Well, we appreciate all of the viewers and everybody, especially if you're hanging out in our community here in the chat room. We love having you. We love interacting with you. But without the members in green, there'd be no channel, quite frankly. So we can't thank them enough, along with all those super chats. And of course, thanks to Mark Gaines for the PayPal contribution. And a shout out one more time for everybody who gave us a super chat today. So Ryan One Full and Charlie Purdy, Nick Caffrey and El Galena, as well as Ben Laird. And Mark Gaines also gave a super chat as well, on top of your memberships. And then, of course, we get Amazon gift cards and other ways of people showing their support that go a long way to helping us have content on the table that we can talk about and introduce you to, versus, some corporation telling me what commercial I'm going to make for you. These are not commercials. They never have been. And if I show you a product, it's because I think it's worth showing you. That's it. That'll wrap it up for me for today. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Friday. Thank you so much for hanging out. We're going to get back to work to continue renovating Studio C here. We've made some pretty good progress. So I'm looking forward to, now that I see something happening. I'm getting a little more excited about moving things around for the 17th time. That'll wrap it up. Thanks again, everybody. Don't know if we'll have a video this weekend or not. We always do a live video on Mondays for members only. So it's just a benefit of membership to hang out with me on a more informal video that we do every Monday that is only available to members. In fact, coming up on Monday, we have an old Ultra Spark Sun workstation that was buried in a closet. And as we've been renovating and clearing out space, we're finding a lot of old, archaic, ancient fossils of technology. I don't know what's on the Sun workstation. I've never even turned one on, but it's a computer, right? So on Monday's video for members only, we're going to put that on the bench and see if it fires up. As far as I know, when it was put away, it worked. And then it was long forgotten and buried And many years later, after it has yellowed with age, it has been uncovered. And we're going to put it on the bench and fire it up and see if it still works and what the heck is on it. Sun went out of business a long time ago, but these were pretty much everywhere in all the places I worked in different departments, like at Intel and the power company and multiple other corporations I've worked for in my career. There were departments I didn't work in that were all Sun workstations. So I always kind of looked at them longingly, but I've never really gotten to touch one. But hey, maybe it won't even work. I don't know. I think if it's technology, if it's a computer, and it's simply been turned off, I think it's likely just going to turn right back on again. You know who's going to find out? Members on Monday at 1 o'clock. So I hope you'll join us then. And that's going to wrap it up for me for today. Thank you for hanging out. We'll see you all again very, very soon. Have a great weekend. Bye for now.